Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. And thank you so much for joining as we're about to discuss another important topical matter. And today we are going to be joined again by Mr. Fred Corbin. And Fred Corbin, a native of Barbados, engineer by profession, historian, political commentator, and a podcaster, radio talk show host, presenter. And you can find him on 246 Radio Vibes Barbados. I will ask him to confirm that link. Mr. Corbin, and I also will leave it in the description. Mr. Corbin wears too many hats, the sizes and colors of which I am unable to keep up with. I know you are all enthralled by his exposés on a wide array of issues on this channel. However, you've got to like the video, share them, and subscribe to the channel to receive more information. These lectures, I can assure you, as someone who spent time in the university system, you'll not be getting what he's telling you from your university professors, whom, like our politicians, have also been captured by large financial interests. So Mr. Corbin is offering his time and talents to us. Let's seize on the opportunity. Get your iPads or simply use the old-fashioned way of taking notes. Get your notepads with your pencils and pens and learn from this intellectual giant, Mr. Fred Corbin. And I'll be allowing him now to join us on the program. Please stay tuned to Mr. Corbin. Good morning, Mr. Corbin. How are you this morning?
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you. Of course, preoccupied with what I'm seeing and hearing happening in the Caribbean region. And we are going to be looking at some of these developments as it affects our region and beyond. So let us get into the weeds of the matter, Mr. Corbin. I've already introduced you. Should you want to tell us or you can probably wait until the end of the program, your link to your podcast in Barbados. Hello?
Yep.
Yes, could you share that information with us?
Sure. That's 246 BajanVibesRadio.com. All one word, 246 BajanVibesRadio.com.
Yes. And I thank you, Mr. Corbett. And I was letting them know that you are offering us your time and your intellect to be here with us and to share this information that they're not getting from universities, because our universities are now attached to private donors and financial, giants. So they're no longer beholden to dispensing objective knowledge and knowledge that will confront and challenge the status quo. Now, Mr. Corbin, we are seeing a lot of things happening. Now, what in the dickens is happening in our region? There are 3 or 6 US warships in the Caribbean, and that's what I'm hearing. Why? And the Caribbean is not a war zone. Could you elaborate more for us, sir, on these unfortunate and disturbing developments as regards to these warships now in the region?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Andrew, and for the information of all of our audience. They
Yes.
need to understand the background of why this is happening.
Yes.
And the reason for the deployment of the United States Navy and the Marine Corps into the Southern Caribbean to challenge the government of Venezuela is the United States of America has identified that the region has to be secured to protect the soft underbelly, as it were, of the southern United States of America. And this was compromised completely during the Biden administration by mass illegal immigration coming out of South and Central America, as well as from Africa. We had massive amounts of African migrants coming across and going into Central America and then going into the southern United States. The unfortunate part about this is that the United States of America was extremely, the CIA, as well as the Bush administrations of the United States government, were instrumental in the economic assassination of Venezuela, which
Yes.
destabilized the entire country and plunged it into an economic disaster of poverty and humanitarian suffering, the likes of which we have never experienced in the Caribbean region before.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, as of today, the United States of America is um, executing a regime change operation, and they are technically blockading Venezuela with a United States Marine Expeditionary Landing Force, which we expect will make the landing on the beaches on the side of Venezuela. And then they have also amassed land forces on the Colombian border, where we see massive amounts of armored vehicles getting ready to cross the border into Venezuela. This is a two-pronged pincer approach from military perspective, which isolates the ability for uh, probably people to flee from Venezuela into Colombia.
Hmm.
And that is also being secured by airborne intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft from the United States Navy. So you have an overarching picture of control over Venezuela. And then you have the president of Guyana, Irfan Ali, who has reiterated that his country is on high alert with regard to the Venezuela-Guyana border. And we well know that over the last 3 years, since 2022, the CIA has established multiple forward operating bases along the Essequibo border between Guyana and Venezuela.
Hmm.
And the Prime Minister of Barbados was actually in on this and instrumental in the facilitation of the negotiations between the American administration and the government of Guyana.
Yes, and also to back up what you're saying, Mr. Corbin, coming out of the Trinidad Guardian this morning, they said that Prime Minister Kamala Caesar has declared TTNT's full support for the United States as American warships enter the Caribbean to target Latin American drug cartels. In a statement yesterday, a day before the scheduled arrival of the vessels, Pursuit Caesar said her government has no hesitation in welcoming U.S. assistance to combat drug trafficking. And this is what she's saying. This is her words. Trinidad and Tobago has been helplessly drowning in blood and violence for the last 20 years. Vice President J.D. Vance spoke the truth when he mentioned our high murder and crime rates. Therefore, no amount of Trump derangement syndrome tantrums and anti-American propaganda will prevent my government from welcoming assistance to combat the terrorist drug cartels. So we can see here that all our governments, are in agreement, or perhaps they are phoning it. I don't know. Now, do you believe that these developments, Mr. Corbin, that we are witnessing could or will plunge the Caribbean region into a warlike zone? Could there be casualties? And what are the economic implications?
I don't think the Caribbean region is going to be plunged into a war zone simply because we have absolutely no input with regard to the United States regime change operations. The
Yes.
regional security service is not involved yet,
Hmm.
and we haven't seen any pledges from Caribbean governments to supply boots on the ground in support of U.S. operations. Not only that, but we have no concrete evidence to support that there will be a definite U.S. intervention with boots on the ground. We only
Hmm.
have right now a naval blockade and posturing, which suggest that that may happen. So
Hmm.
I cannot sit here and say that this is going to be an outcome of a warlike zone or anything like that. And
Correct.
obviously, there's going to be economic fallout simply because the you know we do have some hydrocarbon resource supply from Venezuela, and that will increase now
Hmm.
that Chevron has been granted operational rights to continue exports again out of
Hmm.
Venezuela to the United States of America. And that is ongoing. So the question now remains, why would the United States of America blockade a country that they have given operations to hydrocarbon exports, oil and gas?
Hmm.
This doesn't make any sense when you look at it from a perspective of what needs to be done. Now, if the United States of America is concentrating on creating a blockade to enforce a special forces operation,
Hmm.
that is a question that needs to be asked. Is the United States of America engaged in creating a blockade as a distraction to a special forces extraction of Nicolas Maduro
Hmm.
or a special forces extraction of the former president of Brazil?
Hmm.
We have intelligence right now that proves to us that the United States of America is considering a covert special operations mission to extract Bolsonaro from Brazil.
Hmm. Wow.
We also have indications from assets within special operations forces in Southern Command that the operation into Venezuela will not be of too much of a large scale. It will more be of a concentrated nature in special forces operations targeting specific individuals.
Okay, good, good, good. Now, I think also the economic implications of the US protecting its economic interests, because they understand that there are chapters and there are lots of noise among citizens that, the US is not really giving them or dividing up the wealth in an equal manner, and they're not benefiting, as it were, from the wealth. So, and I did read from a Guyanese paper, I think sometimes last week or the week before, in which the US was suggesting that they're sending warships to protect anybody who attacks any of the US oil companies. So I think that that could be one of the missions of the US. Now, Trinidad has canceled its independence celebrations, as we've discussed before, intimating that it's due to security reasons. Now, Kamala Persad-Caesar, as I've just read, says that she's in full support of the US's move to topple the Nicolas Maduro-led government and to get rid of these drug lords. Is this the reason for her canceling the independence celebrations in Trinidad and Tobago? She might have been briefed about impending US warships in the region closer to her country and Guyana. Do you think that could be one of the reasons why she decided to cancel the independence celebrations in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I have absolutely no evidence to support that the
Yes,
cancellation of the independence celebrations is linked to her being given advance
brief. Yes,
notice of
yes.
military or potential military action in the region. I have no
Mhm.
evidence of that. I
Yes,
cannot sit here righteously and tell the public an opinion that has no weight in evidence.
correct.
What we want to be able to do is that I do agree with the situation as put out by her office that the the cost of over 3 million or 3 million or 3.5 million TT dollars at this particular juncture, right after 100 days in office,
Mhm,
of being able to rebuild Trinidad as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible, that
mhm,
3 million US dollars or 3.5 million US dollars to be spent on independence celebrations that only last for 6 hours
mhm,
is a little bit over the top. And I completely agree
mhm,
with the opinion of um, the Senator Philip Alexander in the Ministry of Housing that this is an unnecessary expense.
Okay.
And Philip and I are we speak regularly and
Yes.
we are in constant contact. And I
Yes.
support Philip's actions 100% when it comes to that.
Okay. Hmm.
And I personally believe that I don't think Trinidad and Tobago will miss not having independence celebrations because at the end of the day, the independence celebrations go on in private homes and parties anyhow.
Yes. Yes.
So why would the nation spend 3.5 million US dollars just to have a parade up and down Port of Spain to prove what?
Yes, yes, yes. Just to throw in something, though, it would be interesting to note if Kamala Persad-Caesar or any government per se would be having an impending election like Jamaica and Guyana, if they would do it. I mean, I would just like to ask any Trinidad that question. If Kamala Caesar was about to hold an election and she wanted to win, or the opposition, would they hold that sort of independence? Would they have canceled that independence celebration? Just a thought there out there. I'm showing that out there. Now, CARICOM seems to be taking the side of the US. I think before I come to that, yes, as a bloc, CARICOM, like you have mentioned on previous occasion, is dead. They've not taken a principled action on the political stalemate between the US and Venezuela. Should we disband CARICOM? If not, what's the role of CARICOM in this current dispensation?
Well, as I've said many times before, carry come and carry gone a long time. Okay. And
Yes.
CARICOM is a helpless instrument that was put in place to keep the Caribbean region divided. It still is a divisive tool used by the United States hegemony and Britain and Europe to pit Caribbean countries against each other, and nothing ever comes out of it.
Mhm,
Now, lots of people have crucified me on social media and other places saying that CARICOM has achieved this, that, and the other, and so on. To what benefit?
mhm, mhm.
To what benefit to the region? Can
Yeah.
anyone please point, listening to this broadcast, can anyone please point to the fact that CARICOM has been an instrument of regional progressive change in the last 40 years.
Yes. Yes.
CARICOM has introduced a tremendous amount of policies and frameworks for individual
Hmm.
islands that have seen benefit trading with other smaller entities and various things in medical and industry and so on and so forth. We cannot deny that. But
Hmm.
when it comes to the overarching progressive nature of Caribbean regional global GDP contributions, what has CARICOM achieved? Tell me.
Yes. 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 And by CARICOM, Fred, we're talking about our leaders. And I want
Mhm.
people to understand that it's not just an empty block. It is made up of our leaders. And that is what they're doing. Go ahead, Fred.
Yes. Yes, I think we need to reclassify what leadership really is
Yes.
because we have no leaders in the Caribbean right now.
Correct.
None. And I
Correct.
mean none.
I,
There are
I agree with
no
you.
there are no leaders of any so-called CARICOM territories in the Caribbean. Right
Hmm.
now, we have politically installed puppets who do the
Yes.
bidding of the global hegemony and the elitists and
Hmm.
have taken all of the democratic, so-called democratic systems and sidelined them in favor of constitutional reform treason
Hmm.
that isolates one single hegemony within a territory at the expense of democratic opposition.
Correct. 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 No. Now, Guyana's election will be on September 1st. President Ali is seeking to be reelected as he sits atop an oil-rich country. However, the U.S. has recently dispatched its military to protect U.S. oil companies in Guyana. What does an impending election mean for Guyana's sovereignty or lack thereof? I mean, a re-election of Ali. I'm not sure if you're following the Guyanese politics closely. I must say, I must confess that I am not really an expert on Guyanese politics. Go ahead, Mr.
Neither am
Corbin.
I. Neither am I.
Yes,
I'm not an expert on politics, period.
yes,
Simply
yes,
because I believe that politics is designed to divide humanity away from government.
yes.
Okay? And in the case of Guyana, I look more at who is actually at the top
Hmm.
rather than the popcorn and scratch grain bickering and squabbling that goes on down the line. Okay.
Correct.
I never look at that. I always look at what's happening at the very top.
Yes,
Because if the
yes.
head of a country is compromised, the population will suffer. There is no question about that. And the thing is, what we have to remember, and this is something that is extremely important, is that we have been installed in the Caribbean here with the Westminster two-party tribal system. Okay.
Hmm.
And there's a massive lie of balance in the Westminster two-party tribal system. And there is a fantastic book called Two Roads by Jamaican author Rec Trebor.
What's
And
his name?
I
Could
was
you repeat his name?
privileged. The name of the book is Two Roads.
Uh-huh. And the
Okay.
author's
Author is Rec Trebor. And
okay.
you can find it on Amazon. And I was privileged to be invited to Jamaica to speak at the book launch of this
Yes,
particular book.
yes.
And I wish to read the paragraphs
Yeah, go ahead.
that outline the lie of balance in the Westminster two-party tribal system from this particular book. And I quote, one of the arguments supporting the two-party system and the Westminster model is the notion of an opposition protecting the public interest from a wayward governing party when, in fact, nominees from both parties were sponsored by the rich to protect their interest. They
Mm.
hide this fact by taking turns in government while playing good cop, bad cop during each
Yeah.
term of office. Once extensive dollars control who is nominated by either party, then all the representatives, whether they're conservative or liberal, serve the elite, the rich and the powerful. The premise of the separation of powers giving independence and balance between the legislator, representatives, judiciary, and executive is pure obfuscation, aimed at hiding the fact that these appointments directly or indirectly are made by representatives elected from those nominated under the money, power, and influence of the elite. It is the
Mm.
process of nomination that is important in the selection of candidates. If the power of money and influence determines who gets nominated, it is insignificant who votes or for whom. The elected representatives will only include servants of the wealthy and powerful. In
Mm.
Jamaica, for instance, the appointments to various commissions all end up being made by the Prime Minister with the consent of the Governor General, the Crown's representative, both proxies for the global elite. Thus,
Yes.
the overall role and function of the state and government is to serve the monarchy and the financial elite.
Yes. Well said. That is well said. And you wonder why you don't hear about these books in Jamaica. You don't hear the Gleaner reviewing these books or the Observer, because I guess it's not in their interest, is it?
I would recommend, and I can personally recommend, that this book be part of the school curriculum of Jamaica
Yes.
and the Caribbean.
Yes.
I will
Yes.
personally also recommend that copies of the legislation and copies of the Constitution be prerequisites for the intellectual development of our school children from the age of 6 years old. 6 years old, when you're learning to read, this should be one of the literary works that is read by 6-year-olds coming into a situation and into school, coming from primary school, going into secondary school, and an understanding of the Constitution, and having this book side by side. That
But if you don't have
is
the philosophies
absolute.
of, yeah, if you don't have the philosophies of Marcus Garvey in schools in Jamaica, for example, do you think they are going to institute this? I doubt it. They all give lip service every year, every election cycle. Marcus Garvey is important. Marcus Garvey's philosophy is important, and they never do it.
Of
All
course not,
is just lip
because
service.
at the end of the day, it comes straight back to exactly what we just read.
Correct.
They're serving the elite and the powerful.
Correct.
Marcus Garvey was was penalized by the rich and the powerful.
Correct.
So they will pay lip service to the policies that he put forward, which would, if we had implemented them, would still be benefiting the Caribbean today.
Absolutely. 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 Now, now, who is President Ali working for? Is the opposition party effective in Guyana, or is it just? Well, I think you answered that question with what you've just read.
Exactly.
Is there an opposition party that is effective in Guyana, or is it just the same as what we see in Jamaica and in Barbados and the other countries?
There is an opposition party, and that is to give the people the impression that democracy is still active, but
Correct.
it is helpless and powerless,
Yes.
just like in Barbados.
Yes, and Jamaica
And
too.
yep, where
Yes.
as we saw in Pastor Epinez's discourse in day before yesterday,
Hmm.
where the majority of the actual incumbent parties have consolidated the power so that
Hmm.
the opposition party remains ineffective but still has a presence.
Yes.
And we see that very, very clearly here in Barbados, where a member of the actual incumbent was sent across the floor to
Yes.
form opposition. He
Yes.
was paid to cross the floor to create opposition and effectively destroy the opposition party and then remain the face of controlled opposition.
Yes, I read about that where, she copped Mayor Motley copped all 30 seats, and then they were so embarrassed, but that's what I read. That it was so embarrassing to the incumbent government that they sent over one to play that role of an opposition. Is that what you're referring to?
That is exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Controlled opposition is a fascinating subject, because
Yes.
when you look at controlled opposition, and you have controlled opposition in many different factions, you have
Hmm.
controlled opposition by a former party member being sent across the floor to create the actual dystopian belief that there is an opposition. And then
Hmm.
you also have the sub factions, which are in social media and so
Hmm.
on, who run controlled opposition programs to make people believe that there is opposition amongst the people and so on and so forth. And
Yes.
at the end of the day, what comes of it? Absolutely
Absolutely
nothing.
nothing. And you're right, Fred, because when you look at the PNP and the GLP in Jamaica, for example, we know that they were cousins, but what's his name? Norman Manley and Buster Manley. So,
Mhm.
and they pretended as if they were opposing each other when they belonged to the same class, the same financial interests, against, of course, the likes of Marcus Garvey and any other party that would have challenged them and their understanding of leadership. You're correct. There's nothing, we understand that we have no position in the Caribbean. Now, Jamaica's election will follow Guyana's. And it's while I was writing this question that I thought about it, never thought about it. And probably you can, I'm scratching your head here. Jamaicans will go to the ballot boxes to exercise their franchise on September 3rd. I have never really thought about it, but why are these election dates of these two CARICOM countries so close? Do you think it is just mere coincidence?
I would not like to sit here and say that it's a coincidence. I would
Right.
prefer to say that it is organized refocusing of US hegemony in the region,
Yeah.
where if you can have the both ends of the region holding elections in concert with your flexing of military might in the region, then you have focused the world's attention that the United States has re-entered the Caribbean region. The ghost of Monroe has now been finally put to rest,
Hmm.
and the consolidation of economic, military power has been reintroduced to the Caribbean region as per the Treaty of 1941.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the Treaty of 1941, which was put in place for those who do not know what that treaty was, that treaty was called the Roosevelt Agreement,
Hmm.
where it was other people call it the Warships for Bases Agreement. But President Theodore Roosevelt made an agreement with Winston Churchill at the behest of
Hmm.
Churchill. And Churchill said, I will give you territories to protect the southern underbelly of the United States of America if you give me 150 World War I warships that I can fight the German U-boat menace in the Atlantic.
Hmm.
And that treaty was for 99 years,
Hmm.
1941 to 2041. And there is a specific clause in that treaty, and I
Hmm.
quote, the United States reserves the right of re-entry for the duration of or the extent of the time period of this treaty.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
can walk back into the Caribbean region at any point in time up
Anytime.
to 2041.
Wow. Wow. Now let's look at Andrew Holness. Andrew Holness is the sort of the is Mr. Siaga's, Mr. Siaga was the one who mentored him. And we saw where Mr. Siaga worked with the CIA. I want to understand the role of Andrew Holness. Andrew Holness seems to just have had it such a very seamless transition, right? From this person who Siaga mentored. He after Golding left office, he was the one who was anointed. And then since that other people have challenged him in the party, he won them and he became the Prime Minister of Jamaica in 2016 until present. What role is the US playing in his sort of administration? When you think of the fact that he also secretively, we just heard last October, November, that he got a PhD from this very prestigious North American university in security. In some form of security and gangs and whatever. Do you think that the US has their blessings on him and his administration?
Well, let us take a step back and look very carefully at what has been happening in the US influence of the election process going all the way back to 2004. And
Yes.
starting in 2004, there was an organization called the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening,
Hmm.
which was created in the United States of America under USAID. And this is also funded by the George Soros Foundation.
Hmm.
And this particular organization has been manipulating the results of elections process for over 20 years.
Hmm.
And we very, very clearly see what has been happening across the Caribbean region with the election of Keith Rowley, Irfan Ali, Mia Motley, Andrew Holness, right
Yeah.
across the entire Caribbean region. They're all leftist, well,
Yes.
political leaders and so on. And that is precisely what you see happening.
And
Now, the
Andrew
only
Holness is right wing though. He's not left
Yes,
wing.
I understand that, but the point
Yes.
is that he was already in power when the suspension of the Constitution
I
of
got
Jamaica
you.
took place.
Correct,
So
correct.
when the Constitution was suspended because of Jamaica being a signatory to the 2005 World Health Regulations,
Hmm.
he had no choice but to play ball.
Mm.
He
I
had
see
no
your
choice. He had
yes.
absolutely no choice to play ball.
Hmm.
I will say this, that I am surprised that the Jamaican people have not removed him.
Yes.
Honestly, I'm surprised that the Jamaican people have not removed Andrew Holness because the level of vitriol and the level of dissent that has dominated the Jamaican communities with regard to the policies he was putting in place during the whole COVID scam was unprecedented. And Jamaica is one of the only countries in the Western Hemisphere that has such a low uptake of COVID-19
Yes.
biological weapons. And
Yes.
I can I don't want to blow my own trumpet here, but I was instrumental in actually bringing a halt virtually to
Yes.
that because of my
Yes.
involvement with the UIC,
Yeah, Joseph Patterson. Yeah.
Mr. Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, we saved hundreds, if not
Mm-hmm.
thousands, of lives in Jamaica and in Grenada as well,
Mm-hmm.
and other places across the Caribbean region, in Antigua and so on, by putting the facts out there. Now, Holness is in a position where he has to toe the line
Mm-hmm.
because he just sent a U.S. nominee to be ambassador to Washington.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can't step away from that now.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
has to toe the line because his
Yeah.
ambassador to Washington is a U.S. developed
Appointed.
asset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you are not going to get Mr. Holness backtracking from that because the ambassador to Washington tells Mr. Holness what the instructions from the State Department are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Holness is doing precisely the bidding of the U.S. hegemony in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And as I've said before, Jamaica has become one of the countries that the United States of America under the Trump administration has refocused their interest in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica. What's
Mm-hmm.
happening with Venezuela is basically the linchpin that will
Mm-hmm.
reinforce the resource management of the northern part of South America in order to reinforce and give the protection to the rising of Argentina and protecting at the same time the Panama Canal and the soft underbelly of U.S. commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see happening in Jamaica is putting a government in place that secures the northern end of the Caribbean region and having cooperative governments in place at the southern end of the region.
Right.
Anything
Right.
can play in between there because the islands are so small, nobody cares.
Now, do you think the US would want to see the likes of a Mark Golding, who is a political neophyte, someone who is in the business world and is recognized and has even been behind a lot of the policies of the IMF that were implemented in Jamaica? So I don't think there would be any difference because he was behind these economic financial policies. What do you think? Do you think that the US would want him to be there as the prime minister?
I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I'm honestly not sure. I don't know if I have enough information on Mark. I will say that Mr. Golding's party has been heavily sponsored by the Mia Mottley administration. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
And one of the Golding party's top liaisons is actually the CEO of one of the large business here in Barbados. So there's a
Mm.
direct linkage going on. And Mr. Golding has seen pretty much a clear path of direction being directed by the Prime Minister of Barbados. So
Mm.
either to a lesser extent or a greater extent. We
Yes.
don't know the inside situation, but we know that funding has been redirected towards his party. And
Hmm.
if the United States of America does believe that Mr. Golding is the one to secure the future of Jamaica with regard to the political aspirations of the U.S. hegemony,
Hmm.
why isn't it much more clearly evident than it is?
Yeah.
We need to ask ourselves the question,
Yeah.
who is the US playing? Which fish do they have on the line? And to
Yeah.
all intents and purposes, they're playing the one that they caught, which is Andrew Holness.
Yeah.
They caught him in office. Trump came in and he was already there.
Yes.
And the fact that you've installed the highest ranking um, military and as well as political or the representative of your country as an ambassador to Washington tells me everything about where this election is going to go.
Correct. And he when he went to the White House, you could see the decorations that and the
Yeah,
encomiums that President Trump was heaping up on him. So you see where the election is going. Yeah. I was saying Mr. Corbin that if Mia Mottley should head there to Jamaica and the Vibes Cartel, for example, probably the last week leading up to the election, it's a possibility, which would be this week. It would be a possibility that the PNP could win Andrew Holness. given the sort of adoration that the Jamaican people have for Miss Motley and for Vybz Kartel?
Well, that's a little bit beyond my scope of
Yes.
recognition right now, because I know nothing about Vybz Kartel. I don't even
Yes.
I've never
Yes.
even
Yes. 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 Yes.
I know nothing about him.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that he was allegedly wrongfully imprisoned in the United States of America, but
Mm-hmm.
I know quite a bit about Miss Motley's aspirations of regional power
Yes.
consolidation,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know what is going on behind the scenes,
Correct.
and we have absolutely no input or evidence to suggest that she may be using herself and Vybz Kartel as a tool of political interference. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, from the little bit that people have been telling me, that Vybz Kartel is the kind of person that's going to get involved in anything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and I'm not gonna sit here and pronounce on something I know nothing
Yes,
about.
yes, yes. In fact, he has a memoir that's Vybz Kartel, which I read, and at the front of the memoir, and I kid you not, Fred Corbin, is Vybz Kartel seated in Jamaica House. You know, and when he came out of the prison cells last year, he was decked in the PNP color, the colors of the PNP. So anything is possible, as you said last night,
Yeah,
and you sent me your message.
yeah.
So we just leave it there. We're not suggesting here, ladies and gentlemen, that that is going to happen. We're just making some projections here and not necessarily saying that these are definitive. To wrap up now, Mr. Corbin, how can citizens of the region prepare themselves mentally, physically, and politically for this impending war with Venezuela? Are Maduro's days counted? And what lies ahead for Venezuela?
Well, as I recounted to a friend of mine this morning, who was um, telling me about the continual migrant Venezuelan migrants coming in to Trinidad to escape poverty and lack of food and so on. We have to understand that Mr. Maduro inherited an economic assassination scenario and also very divisive factions within the Venezuelan military. You have several different factions who are all seeking power over Venezuela. And you have members of the Guardia Civil who are harassing outlying communities and so on in order to secure food for themselves and so on and so forth, and are at the extent of causing some of the poverty and the displacement and the forced migration that is happening out of Venezuela.
Mhm,
As I said to my friend this morning, if the United States of America goes into Venezuela by putting boots on the ground, you are going to see a mass exodus out of that country, because there is nothing that the United States does better than destroying countries and creating massive streams of refugees.
mhm,
Look at Iraq, look at Libya,
mhm,
look at Afghanistan, look back at the historical nature of the 7 countries that have been destroyed in the Middle East, and look at the massive influx of refugees that have happened as a result.
mhm,
You think that what is happening in Venezuela now is bad? If the
mhm,
United States of America goes in and follows the playbook of regime
mhm,
change as it is accustomed to doing, the
mhm.
situation will get infinitesimally worse.
Yes,
Okay? It will
yes,
become a flood that the Caribbean region is ill prepared to deal with, particularly
yes,
Trinidad, because
yes. And
Trinidad is the
Guyana.
closest, and
Hmm.
Guyana. Now,
Hmm.
this is probably one of the reasons why Mr. Ali is reinforcing his position of securing the Guyanese Essequibo border with Venezuela and so on and so forth, but you cannot stop it. When
Yes,
people decide that they're going to move, they are going to move.
yes,
Brazil, in my opinion, is going to be the recipient, most of it,
yes,
because there
yes,
are greater rail and road links going into Venezuela from
yes,
Brazil.
yes.
And you're going to have a reverse migration going into the Roraima district of Brazil. But
Yes.
Trinidad, if you think that there's only like 15 or 20 boats coming across during the week, you're going to see flotillas of small vessels transporting people out of Venezuela to escape the conflict. Because don't forget, Venezuela has a 4.5 million civil militia that will be mobilized and is being mobilized against any invasion. And you